Wisteria, energy, twister. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and the Encyclopedia of Faeries. We're now on the Glashtin, a water fairy found in Manx fairy lore. The Glashtin is described as being part horse and part cow, although it is also called a water bull. Like other water horses, is able to take a human form, although his differs slightly from the Irish and Scottish. Its usage because, while he is said to be very handsome, his ears are pointed like a horse's, even in his human form. One Manx tale relates how a Glashtin showed up on a girl's door during a storm while she was waiting for her father to return, and when she let him in, went to sleep by the fire, she saw his ears and realised what he was, only surviving because dawn arrived and the rooster crowing drove the fairy away. That was a tale from 1976. The next is glamour. Glamour is a special kind of magic that fairies have which they can use to deceive the senses. The word itself comes to us from Scots, meaning enchantment or magic, but with an emphasis on deception. It is believed to be a variant of grameia itself from the Older English, and with the medieval sense of occult learning. In older Scottish accounts, glamour was associated with witches, warlocks, and fairies. In modern terms, glamour has developed new meanings, but it is still associated with fairy magic. Glamour is often thought of as a purely visual type of illusion, but actually the power of this magic goes deeper and is able to fool all of a human being's senses, at least for a time. There is an anecdotal account from the Isle of Man that demonstrates this. I heard of a man and wife who had no children. One night the man was out on horseback and heard a little baby crying beside the road. He got off his horse to get the baby, and taking it home, went to give it to his wife. And it was only a block of wood. And then the old fairies were outside yelling at the man. Ishunoi, Sheptoi Mulit, age one night, how easily thou art deceived. Again from 1911. In this account, we see that the fairy's glamour was enough for the man to hear, see, and feel, at least the baby as real, even though it was not. In many stories, fairy glamour plays a part, particularly in fooling or deluding the sense of a human. Often in stolen midwife stories, the midwife initially believes she has been brought to a fine home, sometimes even a very well-off one, only to touch an eye with fairy ointment and realise that she's actually in a cave or some other rough location. Similarly, we see stories where a human stumbles across a fairy and is brought into a fairy feast and sees what seems to be a spread of delicious food before them, only to later have it revealed to be a collection of unpalatable things. And the most well-known example may be the fairy habit of using glamour to make an object like leaves or gingerbread look and feel like money, only to have its true nature revealed at a later date. The next is Green Children, actually The Green Children, and it's a really well-known folk tale, and it's a true account apparently also. A medieval account from Suffolk, originally printed in Latin but later translated into English, discusses the case of two fairy children who wandered out of their own world and into the human one. The boy and girl were found near a location with various caves and brought to the local knight, likely the highest ranking person nearby, because while they could speak to each other, they lacked any language understandable to local people, and both children had skin tinted green. At first, the pair refused to eat anything but fresh beans, and within a short time, the boy died. However, the girl eventually learned to speak the local language, adapted to eating the food, and was even baptized. She recounted how the two had come from a land without sunlight, but a perpetual twilight, where all the people had green-tinged skin. They had followed the sound of bells through a cavern and emerged in the human world only, bedazzled by the light of the sun, until they were found by the locals. The girl lived out her life afterwards as a human, in service to the night, and was apparently as normal as anyone else, only noted to have loose morals by the standard of the day. You can actually read the full story of that in Fairy Mythology by Keatley's. He tells of it, but there's also various stories that tell of the Green Children. Excuse me. It's in various stories. It's kind of everywhere because it's one of the more well-known stories, let's say. Grimoires and fairies. Generally, when we look for resources on fairies, we look to folklore. There is, however, another more obscure source that can provide us some information on this in the later ceremonial magical grimoires. These texts are very different in nature and tone than other sources, and we must keep in mind as we look at them, but they do give us a glimpse of particularly English view of fairies from the 16th and 17th centuries. The only female beings found in grimoires material are fairies, according to Brock and Raiswell, who suggest that all of the spirits found in grimoires are explicitly male. Even those described as female are referred to as dukes, and are only female in an illusionary sense. When we look at the grimoires material, we find three main groupings of beings: fairy queens, Oberon, and the so-called Seven Sisters. These are all given names, although the names vary in different manuscripts. The Seven Sisters can be bound to teach a person about herbs, nature, and provide a ring of invisibility. The queens can be called on for scrying, manifestation, and sex magic. Knowledge of nature, truth, may also provide a ring of invisibility. All of the names given, however, are somewhat problematic, in that they either can be found nowhere else outside the grimoire material, or else they closely resemble common names or words. Because when witches write in grimoires, they do not use the real names. We don't write like that, like what you think. You don't go to a grimoire and you get the real name and the real spell. It's actually all coded. And if you don't know the code, you have to break the code to be able to understand what it says. Most things are written by symbols only and not by letters. So, actually though, I stopped doing that probably, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, and started writing properly so that hopefully, later in day when I'm no longer around, someone will find it and understand it, because they wouldn't understand the code. Therefore, it'd be no good to them unless they know how to break it. So I started writing in better terms to which people could understand it. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fairies, and many blessings. Wisteria, energy, twister.